names are given properly in the old and sacred way that they used to be given, it should reflect the core of who you are and what you're meant to do. Your purpose, your higher purpose, everything. It should reflect in one way or another. You know, you can be named after something you do a lot, something you say a lot. So it can be something like onomatopoeia, or an action that you, so you can be named that way, but whatever that action is or that vocalization is, it still has to reflect the core of who you are. A long time ago, I was practicing that connection between nature. I like to call it voices of nature because that's kind of what it is. Trees, rivers, stones, the land itself, the animals and the forest, everything can communicate on this wavelength through kind of like for lack of a better term, telepathy. It is a back and forth conversation with words, and it's just kind of innately translated, just automatically translated. It's an understanding, it's a connection that only things of nature have with one another. Humans typically don't, unless they're of what I call of nature. If you're a human that's of nature, your best chance of that is going to be that maybe you've lived as something other than human in many, many past lives. You know, you're an animal spirit or an animal shifter, but you don't necessarily have to be. You know, regular old humans can learn how to turn that sixth sense on as well. It just takes a bit more practice, because if you're already part of your spirit, or a big piece of your spirit is something other than human, if that is already of nature, then all you've got to do is flip a switch in your brain and in your spirit. You could just flip a switch. But if you don't have that inside you and your spirit is human, then it's not like just flipping a switch. You've got to create the switch and then flip it. You know, you've got to craft it and then flip it. If you've, you know, already big piece of you part of nature, it's already crafted for you, and all you've got to do is flip it. That makes any sense. So I first learned my name, my true name, through communicating with the voices of nature, because they would always call me by the same name. I didn't know what it meant. I just knew that I liked it, and I felt like it was me, but I didn't know what it meant, and I really wanted to know what it meant. So I did some visionary work and some things, and that took me to a past life where I saw that moment that I was first named, what they were calling me. It's onomatopoeia, my name is, and loosely translated it means fierce defender. What I was doing, I would take things. First it was things, and then it was someone, or, you know, a friend, or maybe a pup or something that I was trying to protect. But it was like, I love this thing, this is my thing, and you're not going to hurt this thing, and I'm going to protect this thing from you because this is my thing. You know, it's just like, and there's in wolf tongue, there's a specific kind of growl that wolves will do when they're standing over something frozen like that and fiercely defending it. So because I said that almost constantly, apparently, that's what I got named. And it was actually quite, in almost every life I've lived, you know, that represents who I am at my core. You know, even my not so great times where I strayed off the path of what I should be and instead did something not so great, it was still the core of who I was meant to be and who I really was inside. I'm a protector. I get really rageful easily. I don't trust easily, you know, and it's just everything that I was doing, it just made sense, you know. It made sense to me, that name. So anyway, I usually can't, because it's done by spirit, I usually can't do it just unless I'm actually feeling that emotion. It'd be like trying to act like you're angry at somebody when you're not angry at somebody. But I'll use my name as an example because even though it's onomatopoeia, you don't hear the growl. When they call you by that name, you don't hear the growl. It gets turned into a word. So I'm going to show you how that onomatopoeia, the initial thing, morphs itself into an actual word for a name. Okay, so this is what I was doing, roughly. This is what I was doing. So yeah, I can't do it justice when I'm not actually mad. But translated onomatopoeia, this is what I hear. This is what I hear when totems call me by name. This is what I hear. Norhun. That's what I hear. Norhun sometimes, but typically it's Norhun. It's complicated even to say. It's more complicated to speak it with my human lips than it is to. But anyway, that's what it translates into. So the nar is the rhun is okay. So it does come from somewhere. If you break it down like that, you can kind of see how and why it sounds like that, and how it gets translated into an actual word. It's not always what you say, it's sometimes what you do. And when it's what you do, a lot of times that is a lot easier to say because it's names like chasing buffalo, chases buffalo. You know, that's so much easier. That those names are so much easier because they're not onomatopoeia. So chases buffalo would probably mean that you are a hunter and you like to hunt buffalo. But that goes way beyond just that. You chases, you're analysing the metaphor of chases, and you're also analysing the metaphoric totemic meaning of buffalo. So it goes a lot deeper than you think. And so if it's not a vocalization or an action, if it's not what you say or do, then it's just in general, in essence, who you are. And when that comes down to it, that can be in a bunch of different languages. And I'm convinced that a lot of these languages are not known by man. Some of them might be known by man, but some of them I don't think have a direct translation. The language of trees, for example, I'm not sure that always gets directly translated into a language that man has. So sometimes you'll hear it and you'll try to look up the name, and even though the name isn't something that you do or say, it doesn't exist. It's either a dead language or it's a language only known in that of nature. So like I said, a lot of times it can translate, you know, it can translate to whatever language. That's just part of nature, actually, this connection in nature. Think of it this way. If you have someone who speaks Spanish, another one who speaks French, someone who speaks Gaelic, another person who speaks English, and no one knows how to communicate that way, but through that connection, that telepathy, it automatically gets translated into your language. I know that's like, but it does. So if someone's speaking to me in French, I don't know what the fuck they're saying, but with that connection, I would know what they were saying in my own language. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is some names will still be spoken in their language, but if you ask them what they mean, then you'll be able to know. Oh yes, that means bringer of ice and snow. Okay, I understand now, but it's actually quite shorter to say it in your tongue, because your tongue is a lot quicker to say that. So you know what I'm saying? So it kind of makes sense a lot of times to keep it in their language, because bringer of ice and snow is, I'm not just making that up, there's a tree outside that's named that. And it roughly translates, but there's no direct translation. That's the closest but there's no actual direct translation. There's no English words that directly, so that is why I'd say, you know, you can't, a lot of times you can't substitute. A lot of times to truly justify the name, you have to keep it in their language. Ishanahe is the best way that I can pronounce it. That's a very hard one to say, but that is what it would be if I didn't translate. And like I said, it doesn't translate properly either. It's not a direct, the meaning is not proper. It's still not, bring your ice and snow is still not the exact meaning. There's no words to explain. So some of these things you'll find are, you know, you can always find out what they are. If you've got that connection, you can find out what they mean. But you oftentimes will hear it, and these names to you will sound very odd and foreign. And a lot of people that do work in the spirit realm, and they're talking to guides and totems and things, if they ever ask the names of these beings that they're talking to in the spirit realm, a lot of times you'll get the same thing happen in the spirit realm. You'll realize that all their names are so strange to you. Their names sound really otherworldly or ancient or something, because it's either something, a dead language, or a language you've never heard before, and it's just I think it's more prevalent, you know, than when you're speaking to a human, a perhaps human spirit versus an animal spirit, a totem. You know, it's more prevalent when you're talking to totems and things that you find these kind of odd, for lack of a better term, but they're not really odd, names. Trust your gut. When you hear it, you're hearing it for a reason. It's not random. Trust what you hear, because it may sound fuck ass weird to you, but that's actually quite normal. That's more normal than the way that we're used to naming people today. Because literally the rest of existence, that's how the rest of existence names their children. We humans are actually the exception. We humans are the odd ones. Luckily, you've got a lot of tribes out there that are stuck with the Odin way to name, and this Odin sacred way of naming. And if you've ever tried to do a naming ceremony, if the wind is present and you've gotten the name right, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, even if the wind is barely present, this big gust of wind is going to come right when you've gotten the name right, and you'll feel a shift in the air, a positive shift in the air. When you've got it wrong, you'll feel this kind of negative, itching, negative feeling like it's wrong. Many spirits, when they're born into a new life, they already have a name. You don't have to name them because they've already got a name, so you need to listen for what their name is. Ones that don't have a name yet, you'll have to name them. You'll have to come up with a name. And usually the ones that don't have a name yet, no, they've been given names probably in many, many past lives. It's just that they don't want to use any of those names for their current life. They want a different name for the current life. And you have to be able to sense who wants to keep their old name and who wants a new name. When you name people the ancient pagan way, if you name them wrong, you're naming them with magic, and if you name them wrong, it's not as easy to push aside like it would be if someone just randomly gives somebody a name without magic. That's very easy to push aside. I can push aside my birth name on the birth certificate that I have, because whilst it was given to me out of hatred and rage and disgust, there was no magic behind it. It's meaningless. When you use this magic, you give it a meaning. And so you have to be really careful that you name them right. If you don't know what your earth name is, ask the totems, they'll probably tell you. If you don't have one, your guides and guardians might give you one. And if you've listened correctly, the results will be profound.